Wind Waker was the game I was the most curious about going back to for this marathon, then Skyward Sword was definitely the game I was the most nervous about returning to. I first played the game digitally on my Wii U, and I was prepared to not enjoy it. I had heard from a few friends that Skyward Sword was one of the lesser Zelda games, but I still wanted my own opinion, so I was going to do it anyway. I did end up putting the game down a bit after I started, but that was because of outside factors and not because of the game itself. Around that time, I was just starting my education at Ferris State University, and I was getting caught up in taking classes, doing theater, Twitch streaming, meeting new friends, getting my ass handed to me in every single fighting game I owned by my buddy Pat. Scrub I am, and forever one I shall be. But I always wanted to go back and finish the game. That wouldn't happen until 2011 when the HD remaster came out, and when I played through it for the first time on the Switch, I ended up really liking it. But now that I have all the other games in the series in recent memory, is my opinion on the game going to change at all? And if so, will it be for better or for worse?
So after the release of Twilight Princess, Eiji Aonuma began wondering whether the Zelda team could continue making games using the same mindset they've had for development up until then, and the 25th anniversary called for something big. When development for the next game began, the Wii version of Twilight Princess was used as the starting point, as they felt as their vision of a vast and realistic world wasn't fully realized. The team also wanted to add some sort of new play structure to avoid fans seeing the next entry as just more of the same, and the team began experimenting with the Wii's motion controls. Aonuma was struggling to figure out how they could make it work, and eventually he told the team that they should probably go with a more traditional control scheme. But then the game's director, Hidemaru Fujibayashi, brought up the possibility of using the Wii Motion Plus accessory. And once Aonuma saw it in action thanks to Wii Sports Resort, he was convinced the team should stick with the motion controls. To negate the sudden need for the Wii Motion Plus accessory, there were limited editions of the game that came bundled with this golden Wii remote that had the accessory built into it. I always wanted to get this when I was younger because of it being Zelda themed, and because it was gold. I can't help it, I'm a greedy little gremlin. This wasn't the first or last time a gold Zelda themed accessory or console was released. I really want to try and grab some of these, especially this golden Majora's Mask new 3DS XL. This shit looks awesome. Skyward Sword was released on November 20th, 2011 in North America, and stop me if you've heard this one before, it was received to critical acclaim. Eventually, as another holdover between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, an HD remaster of Skyward Sword was released on the Nintendo Switch in 2021, once again developed by Tantalus Media, which added some small quality of life features, a whole new control scheme option, and amiibo support. Whew, I'll get to you later. Limited edition Switch Joy-Cons were also released alongside the game, and man, these things look beautiful. It's just a shame these things cost me both my arms to get.
Well, clearly I put a lot of thought into this. Of course I'll be looking at the HD remaster for today, but I did mess around with the Wii version for comparison's sake. I'm sure you guys are probably aware of why this game doesn't have the best reputation, but we need to talk about the story first. So kids, grab your Joy-Cons, make sure your Wii remotes are at maximum capacity, and let's dive below the clouds and take a look at the story of The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword.
So, despite them creating the official timeline in the Hyrule Historia for the 25th anniversary, the team took a look at the timeline and said, wait, this sucks. And to avoid having to deal with all this bullshit, Skyward Sword takes place at the very beginning of the Zelda timeline, long before the founding of the Kingdom of Hyrule. Sometime after the creation of the land and the departure of the three golden goddesses, a fissure in the earth appeared and demonic forces rushed out, slaughtering the people and decimating the land, all in search of the holy Tostitos themselves, the Triforce. The relic was once guarded by the goddess Hylia, and to ensure the safety of the land and its people, Hylia gathered the remaining humans and the Triforce onto a large chunk of the earth and sent it skyward, out of the demon tribe's reach. With the humans and the Triforce safe, a great battle was fought with the forces of light coming out on top, but due to her injuries, and to prevent the darkness from returning, Hylia gave up her holy form and chose to reincarnate as a mortal. Centuries later, the chunk of Earth would become known as Skyloft, and most memories and records of the surface were lost to time. The town is preparing for the annual Wing Ceremony, where students of the Knights Training Academy compete to advance to the next class level of the institution. Of course, among this year's contestants is Link, who aims to win the race to advance in the class and participate in the ceremony honoring the goddess and her chosen hero with his childhood best friend, Zelda. She tries to get Link to practice before the big event, but to their shock, Link's Crimson Loftwing has gone missing as a result of being locked up by the local Bully Groose and his merry batch of dickheads. Link manages to find his bird and wins the race with no issues, and him and Zelda take to the skies to celebrate. A sudden tornado knocks Link unconscious and drags Zelda to the world below. Link is safe thanks to his bird and the Academy headmaster Gaepora, but Zelda is nowhere to be found. Link is beckoned by this mysterious being and is led to a secret room under the statue of the goddess. The figure introduces herself as Fi, a spirit sent by the ancient goddess to aid her chosen hero. Fi tells Link if he wishes to save Zelda, he must take up this goddess sword and travel to the land below. So after grabbing some new attire that would make all future heroes proud, Link travels to the surface world. He enters this mysterious temple at the sealed grounds and encounters this old woman, who tells Link that Zelda is safe, but currently on a personal journey of her own. She points Link in the general direction of the Faron Woods, but before Link can catch up with Zelda, he's challenged by self-proclaimed leader of the demon tribe, Girahim, who wishes to capture Zelda and use her to revive his true master. After battling the crazy bastard, Link arrives in the Spring of Courage, but finds that he just missed Zelda. Link then makes his way to Elden Volcano and eventually meets up with Zelda, but she is prevented from speaking to Link thanks to her guardian Impa, who not only scolds Link for taking so long to get there, but also essentially calls him a little bitch boy. So after Link gets done being a little pissy boy as well, he heads over to the Lanayru Desert, and he manages to catch up with Zelda and Impa, only for Girahim to show up and attempt to take Zelda again. Zelda gives Link her harp, and Impa takes Zelda through this gate of time, destroying it in the process to prevent Girahim from following. With no real direction on what to do next, Link returns to the sealed grounds, but not before being tackled to the surface by Groose. The old woman teaches Link the Ballad of the Goddess, which causes a second time gate to appear, but upon its reveal, an ancient evil sealed near the temple breaks free from its prison. Link drives the monster back into its seal, and the old woman tells Link that in order to activate the new gate of time to reach Zelda, he needs to travel across the 3 regions of the surface and bathe the goddess sword in the 3 sacred flames.
Are you serious?
So with Zelda's harp, 5-6 dance moves, and a shit ton of patience, Link travels across the 3 regions of the surface and bathes his blade in the 3 sacred flames, which transforms the goddess sword into the legendary Master Sword, the blade that... God, I took so long making the damn thing, I don't have a joke here. Damn it. Well, with the Master Sword forged, Link heads back to the sealed ground, sucks some toes, activates the Gate of Time, and travels to the ancient past. There he finally reunites with Zelda, who tells Link that she's actually the mortal reincarnation of the goddess Hylia. She explains to him that the imprisoned monster sealed near the temple is the weakened state of the Demon King Demise, and after Hylia sealed Demise away thousands of years ago, she had suffered grave injuries during the battle, and she knew the seal on him would not last forever. So she devised a plan spanning hundreds of years to guide the hero with an unbreakable spirit to use the Triforce to destroy Demise, and reincarnate into a mortal to further motivate the hero to complete his journey. Zelda then blesses Link's blade, and it takes the form of the true Master Sword, the blade that kicks major ass. Ah, there it is. Zelda also tells Link that as the reincarnation of the goddess Hylia, she must remain in a deep sleep for thousands of years to keep Demise sealed, and tells Link to find the Triforce to use it to destroy Demise so she can awaken in the present time. After a gut-wrenching goodbye, Link travels back to the present to locate the Triforce. His search leads him to encounter the Sky Spirit Levias, who tells Link to seek the 3 dragons of the surface so they may teach him their parts of the Song of the Hero. Come on, man, don't make me go back to the surface. I've already been there like 6 fucking times! Link once again proves his worth and tests his fucking patience, acquires all parts of the Song of the Hero, and uses it to open the way to the Sky Keep. Through this final dungeon, Link acquires all 3 pieces of the Triforce and wishes for the complete destruction of Demise. The Sky Keep, along with the Isle of the Goddess, is sent crashing down to the surface, killing Demise for good. With Demise gone, Link heads back to the sealed temple and Zelda is reawakened. And now her and Link can finally be together.
Goddesses, damn it!
Girahim suddenly ambushes the group and takes Zelda through the Gate of Time to revive his master in that timeline.
We were so close!
Link travels to the past one last time to save Zelda, but Girahim is able to distract Link long enough for his ritual to be complete. The imprisoned absorbs Zelda's soul and Demise is fully reborn. Impa and Groose tell Link that Zelda's soul hasn't been fully absorbed yet, and that he can still save her if he defeats Demise in time. In one last battle, Link is able to defeat Demise, but before he fades away from existence, he places a curse on Link and Zelda so that an incarnation of his hatred will forever follow those who hold the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero. Link seals the remains of Demise within the Master Sword, and along with Zelda and Groose, return to the present. Link and Zelda set to make a new life on the surface, and they finally live happily ever after, finally ending Skyward Sword.
Holy shit. I'm jumping the gun a bit by saying I really enjoyed the story, but good God, it took forever to get through. Let me hop into the negatives real quick, because while I only have a couple of them, there's some pretty big complaints.
So remember when I said that while it was long, Twilight Princess didn't feel long to me? For Skyward Sword, not only is the game's story longer than Twilight Princess, but it definitely felt long too. The game's general structure is partially to blame for that. In previous games, the general plot structure was proving your worth in the first few dungeons, pulling out the Master Sword halfway through the game, and then completing the late game dungeons and saving the day in the second half. But Skyward Sword changes the structure to make the process of getting the Master Sword its own third of the game. And while I do think it's pretty cool to see the Master Sword be forged, that's essentially the only fucking thing that's happening during this section of the game. I mean, Cruz has a little arc and goes from being a dick to being someone more honorable and humble, and I'd like that, but there isn't enough of it through the story. It has multiple points at which the game could have gone into the finale, only for the game to say, nope, gotcha, we're gonna keep going for a few more hours. And Fi? God, what wasted potential. She starts off as being cold, emotionless, and will constantly list off percentages of likelihoods. And that's it. Fi has no character growth as far as I'm aware. She starts as an emotionless mannequin, and that's her shtick till the credits roll. If maybe she started becoming more human, like, as say maybe you force the sword in the flames, then maybe this whole emotional scene before she sleeps in the Master Sword would be a lot more impactful. And while these issues are pretty prevalent, I'm honestly willing to forgive them just because of the relationship between Link and Zelda. These two are adorable! It's a nice change up from traditional Zelda stories. The relationship these two have as childhood friends and all the moments of them together is the Link and Marin relationship from Link's Awakening done right. On their own, I love these versions of Link and Zelda. I relate to this version of Link more than any other incarnation of the character so far. He's extremely laid back and is a huge goofball, but when things get serious, he puts his life on the line to protect everyone he loves. I'm also glad that Link is expressive again, and that's not to say that Link from Twilight Princess wasn't capable of doing the job, but this Link runs laps around the last one. Zelda is such a sweetheart here. You can tell how much she cares about Link, and despite her multiple attempts to assassinate him, she'll do anything for Link. The romantic subtext is heavy here, and I don't tend to do this very often because shipping couples in general isn't something I tend to do, but there were many times I was just screaming, "Kiss already!" You really want to see Link save Zelda this time, and not because it's fate or because it's tradition, but because they're best friends. That relationship was the driving force I had playing the game because I wanted to make sure that Zelda was okay. You don't do it for the Hylian shield, you do it for her.
God, I'm a simp.
Girahim was everything I wanted Zant to be as a villain. He's so damn entertaining, and every encounter with him was a freaking hoot. I do wish he showed up a bit more, but his performance was more than fulfilling. In prison form aside, I do like Demise, but again, more so than Girahim, I wish we saw more from him. Despite the fact that he's the Demon King, he's underutilized to hell and back. But I got really hyped up when he ripped his sword out of Girahim's chest. Oh, he's enjoying it! That's gross. There are plenty of unique characters you meet throughout your adventure, both above and below the clouds, but with the exception of a small handful, they really don't matter to the overall story, which is a damn shame because I think Skyward Sword has some great character designs. My favorite characters are Link, Zelda, Groose, and Girahim by far, but aside from one or two of them, I don't hate any characters in the story.
So despite its bigger issues, I'd say I still really enjoyed the story of Skyward Sword, and honestly, I think that's how I can sum up my opinions on Skyward Sword in general.
Link himself is about the same as previously, combat aside, I'll talk about that in a minute. The biggest addition to Link's movement is his new stamina meter. Link can full-on sprint now, and some of Link's actions like climbing vines and ladders, rolling, and the spin attack also make use of this stamina gauge. It may seem like some sort of needless addition at first, but I welcome it. Aside from rolling, the gauge just lets you do all this stuff faster. Link's default running speed is about as fast as Twilight Princess, so while the sprint isn't a necessary addition, I do think it's a welcome one. It does help a lot when you need to backtrack through various areas though, more on that later. Combat has been reworked to utilize more movements Link can make with his sword swings, and of course that is done with the motion controls. Your Wii Remote / right Joy-Con represent your sword, and your Nunchuck / left Joy-Con are representative of your shield. You need to swing the controller the direction you want to attack, and we're not talking about the swing of the controller being a glorified button press like in the Wii version of Twilight Princess. The way that Link moves his sword is almost one-to-one with how you move your controller. Used effectively, it does end up making the combat fun and engaging for me, and it's definitely a nice change of pace, especially since aside from a few instances here or there, enemy encounters played out very similarly in previous games, so it's nice that they were willing to change things up a little bit. Most enemies will now be a bit more defensive and only leave a specific part of themselves exposed, so in that way, each opponent you fight is a puzzle in of themselves. I know back when the game was coming out that there was major concerns of Skyward Sword being hampered by the motion controls due to it being released for the Nintendo Wii. But when you at least look back on Nintendo's first-party titles, while some of them were more involved than others with the Wii Remote, they were still able to make the games fun and in some rare instances a bit more engaging. It was still completely understandable that players would be worried if they looked at some third parties' implementations of the Wii's motion controls, or even with some titles from Nintendo themselves, but it was more so worry coming from other developers' games. For those who still may be worried about the motion controls in Skyward Sword being a huge hurdle, I can report that for the most part the controls of the Wii version work well. Things work how you expect them to, and the only gripes I have with the controls is the stab move not coming out as fast as I would like, and the fatal blow being a bit awkward to pull off. Thankfully, these moves feel much better to pull off in Skyward Sword HD. In fact, the motion controls in general feel a lot better in this version. With the release of the HD remaster, Nintendo created a control scheme for all button controls to accommodate for players who would be playing the game on the Switch Lite. Everything has been assigned to buttons, with the sword controls being placed on the right analog stick. It took some getting used to at first, but on subsequent playthroughs, the button-only control scheme works really well. Everything is responsive, and your previously motion control exclusive abilities feel really natural with buttons. I think the only thing that throws me off whenever I play the game is that you have to hold down the L button in order to use the camera. But if I can get used to this shielding shit with Inkling and Smash Ultimate, I can get used to this. Remember the sword beams you could fire at full health with a sword in the 2D games? Well, you could sorta do that here as well via the new Skyward Strike. By raising your sword skyward, you can charge up for a bit and unleash a beam onto your opponents. I mostly used it to cut grass and activate certain things, but by endgame, when you have the true Master Sword, the Skyward Strike can be deadly. Skyward Strikes are also used to activate these Goddess Crests, the Goddess Walls, and the Goddess Cubes. Goddess Crests are pretty much just for plot progression, so nothing too special there. You can draw certain things on the Goddess Walls to get some items like hearts and rupees to appear, and that's kinda nifty. The biggest thing to use the Skyward Strike for is the previously mentioned Goddess Cubes. You find these random boxes all over the surface, which when hit with the Skyward Strike, will activate a corresponding Goddess chest somewhere up in the sky for Link to open up. It's got rewards like medals, rupees, some heart pieces, and bottles, but they are completely optional. It's said that these were placed here by the goddess herself to assist her chosen hero, so let's open one up and see what we got here. The goddess is a bitch. The swordplay alone isn't what makes the combat though. Another part of what makes it fun for me is the new shield bash. By flicking the nunchuck or left Joy-Con forward, Link will thrust forward his shield to block certain attacks and defense. You gotta time it right though, because you can't just leave your shield out to block attacks, as your shield can end up taking damage and breaking. Previously, you only had to worry about losing a wooden shield if you caught on fire, but now you gotta watch how much damage your shield takes. But if you time your shield bash just right, you can parry certain attacks and follow up with strikes of your own. And I tell you, when you block a big wind-up strike from an enemy and parry that motherfucker into next week, oh, it feels better than cocaine.
Not that I know what cocaine is like.
If you do damage your shield and don't want to buy a new one, you can use this revitalizing potion to do repairs, or you can talk to this guy in the bazaar to upgrade it into stronger forms. Making repairs isn't something you have to worry about with the regenerating Goddess Shield or the invincible Hylian Shield you get later in the game. On top of upgrading shields, he can also upgrade other equipment and even your dungeon items to give them some added perks. You want your bow to be more powerful, or your beetle to be tougher, or have a bigger net? Well, with the various materials you can collect through the game, you can do just that. Materials can be found either in specific spots in the world by killing certain enemies, or by doing really well in certain minigames. I honestly don't mind gathering materials for upgrades, and the game has plenty of opportunities for you to collect them. Bugs can now be collected to create more powerful versions of potions, and if you find yourself with too many bugs that you don't need or use, you can talk to this guy Stritch here, and he'll buy specific bugs from you depending on the night. If you need to find more materials or specific bugs, you can carry these medals in your inventory. These medals have various effects like displaying bug locations, spawning more hearts, giving a greater chance of dropping materials and rupees, and even adding extra heart containers to your overall health meter. But you can only carry a certain amount of these with you because of this new dumbass change to your inventory. So you can carry around all your dungeon items just fine, but for other items like bottles, quivers, bomb bags, medals, and Link's shield, they're being limited to being carried around in your adventure pouch, which can be upgraded from 4 slots to 8. But why am I limited with these items and not these items? Or why can I only have 8 slots on my adventure pouch, but 87 pissed off wasps in my back pocket are perfectly fine? When you got an upgrade like that in a previous game, you just gotta carry more of those items. So why do I not only have to pick and choose which ones I'm carrying, but also upgrade them to hold more shit? Why can't I just upgrade the capacity and leave it at that? It just all feels like a needless limitation. With that being said, I love the dungeon items in this game. Of course, I'll forever give praise to the usuals, but the new toys are great to use. I initially didn't think much of the new beetle, but it has a lot of versatility. Not only can you use it to collect items and hit switches you can't reach normally, but with the hook upgrade you get in Lanayru Desert, you can grab bomb flowers and drop them on enemies.
Tactical nuke incoming!
I found this bomb bag in the Earth Temple, but it didn't have any bombs in it. So I found a bag. The bombs can still be thrown in place as normal, but now you can roll them for some good old bomb bowling. The digging claws were alright. You can dig in certain spots for items, and with the upgraded magma mitts, You can dig underground for traversal and treasure. The Gust Bellows. Portable vacuum cleaner. That's awesome. The Water Dragon scale is essentially your Zora Tunic equivalent, and not only can you swim with it, but you can also do the spin drill move to bust through barriers and jump like a dolphin. Link gets a whip which you can use to grab and pull switches and platforms, swing from bars like the grappling hook in Wind Waker, and steal items and materials from certain enemies. The double claw shots are self-explanatory. I'm so glad these are back. The bow is also self-explanatory, but you can also charge the shot up now. Neat. And hey, the bug net is back from A Link to the Past. Wait, hold on, let me try something. And they say the Master Sword is the strongest weapon ever forged. Try to soak this thing in the sacred flames.
So to sum up everything so far, I'd say Skyward Sword is kind of similar to a monkey's paw in some sense. You know, you got a lot of good quality of life features and some things that really shake up the formula, but it's held back by some dumb design choices, and no bigger example is than with the game's general structure.
Okay, so you're spending most of your adventure on the surface, and it's split into 3 different biomes of sort, being the Faron Woods, the Elden Volcano, and the Linear Desert. Throughout the 3 main sections of the game, which is Finding Zelda, the Sacred Flames, and the Triforce, you gotta go through the main 3 areas multiple times to progress. You're not always going through the same areas upon your revisits, and more often than not, you're exploring a new section of the larger area, like with Lake Floria or the Ancient Sand Sea. Sure, you're still in the desert, but now you're on a boat with a big-ass cannon. But of course, sometimes you gotta travel through the exact same areas anyway for no good reason. The worst offender for this bullshit is Elden Volcano by far. I love how this area is designed, but the game keeps shoving it down my throat, this motherfucker being the lead cause. So to get into the Fire Sanctuary, you have to take this basin of spring water and dip it on this frog thing. Sounds easy, right? Welp! Scrapper decides that he doesn't want to land right where it's convenient and makes you climb from the base of the mountain all the way back up. Yes, I see you have feelings for the plank of wood, it's already creepy, you can stop. Revisiting Faron Wood the 3rd time wouldn't have been that bad if it wasn't for this bitch. Fucking Faron, I swear to God. So when you start the quest for the Sacred Flames, you end up over in Lake Floria, and you find Faron in this water basin, healing from injuries from Girahim. And she asks you to bring her more spring water, which doesn't sound bad, until you realize you have to go backtrack through the first dungeon.
Nope. This is where it starts.
So you get her the water, she says thanks, and opens the way to the Ancient Cistern so you can get Forest Flame. Peachy. When you come back for the Triforce quest, you find out that Faron flooded the forest to get rid of all the monsters in the area. I mean, you just essentially ruined the ecosystem of many of the natural creatures that inhabited the area as it is, but even after seeing me with the Water Dragon scale, knowing I'm the goddess's chosen hero, and even with the goddamn Master Sword on my back, she still makes you swim around collecting these stupid-ass notes to complete her part of the song of the hero. And then she acknowledges you as the goddess's chosen hero and teaches you her part of the song. Piece of shit. The Linear Desert should have been their prime fucking example on how revisiting these areas would work. For the most part, your revisits are split up between the 3 different sections of the area, and while you're kind of doing the same thing with the time shift stones, the new areas expand further on the concepts introduced in previous visits.
I mean, aside from those couple of examples, I didn't mind traversing the world too much, and at least traversing the sky isn't complete bullshit.
When you're not on the surface, you're flying around on your Loftwing. I'll straight up say it's better than the sailing in Wind Waker, but it still doesn't come without its snags. The sky itself is quicker to traverse since it's not as large as the Great Sea, but it still feels like there isn't enough to do, thus making it feel emptier. I mean, aside from Skyloft and the Thunderhead, you have the Lumpy Pumpkin, the Bamboo Island, and Fun Island, but I'm only visiting these places like once or twice for heart pieces and materials. Except for Fun Island. The rewards you can get in this minigame is one of the biggest rupee payouts I've ever seen in the franchise. This and the Thrill Digger minigame were great sources of cash in the game. Skyloft itself is a nice little community up here in the clouds, and it's a bit more condensed compared to something like Clock Town or Hyrule Castle Town from Twilight Princess. All the important stuff is on one side, and all the optional shit is on the other side. You got a couple side quests here and there, and they're par for the course for Zelda side quests, although this minigame with Fletch can suck pumpkins. And of course, when you're not doing anything else, you're inside dungeons. While I'd say the dungeons in Twilight Princess are overall better quality, the ones in Skyward Sword are just as good at points. And I can't really think of a dungeon that I didn't like, and I think that's pretty commendable. Skyview Temple is your run-of-the-mill starter dungeon. It makes great use of its item and has some cool motion control puzzles that you never do again for the rest of the game. Huh. The Earth Temple is a nice fire dungeon. I like using this ball to roll around the lava. That's about it. Oh, but man, the Lanayru mining facility is great, if only for its use of the time shift stones. What once was old is now new, and needing to change the time between the two periods to affect different parts of the dungeon or revive enemies long dead is such a cool concept, and it's executed very well. My favorite dungeon is probably the Ancient Cistern. Not only does the dungeon have great puzzles and pacing, but I love the dichotomy between the upper and lower halves of the dungeon, doing a sort of heaven and hell theme that's pulled off really well. The sand ship is a close second place though. It's more time shift stone stuff, but you're on this pirate ship trying to rescue the crew. I really like the puzzles that require you to change the condition of the ship by shooting the time shift stone at the very top of the mast. The Fire Sanctuary has a fantastic aesthetic, and it's a pretty good dungeon in its own right. Using these water plants to make platforms in the lava was nifty. The Sky Keep is one of the best final dungeons in the entire franchise. Each room in the dungeon is based off previous dungeons, giving them a great amount of variety through aesthetics and puzzle solving. But the cherry on top is how you actually traverse through the dungeon. Using these slider things, you can actually rearrange the rooms to get to the 3 different rooms with the Triforce pieces. This alone makes it one of the most open-ended dungeons in the series, and that's awesome. I'm also confident in saying that Skyward Sword has some of the best boss fights in the series. Part of what makes them so engaging is because of the combat mechanics, but each boss also has unique attacks and such to make the fight not only distinctive, but also fun. Scaldera is a bit unique since you use bombs to keep him on the lower level of the arena and expose his eye from behind his outer shell. I also can't see him as anything other than a giant Pac-Man with spider legs, and that kinda bothers me. Molten Rock is essentially a scorpion variant of Goma from previous games, and you gotta line your strikes up with his claws before you go for the eye. Do I consider this a hit the hands boss? He gets a pass. I love the fight with Koloktos in the Ancient Cistern. In the first phase, you use the whip to rip his arms off to get to the weak spot, but in the second phase, you rip the arms off and grab one of his swords to beat the ever-loving piss out of him. It's amazing. Tantalus is perfectly fine. Doesn't have anything that wows me, but it also doesn't piss me off. The build-up to the fight is better than the fight itself. You escape through the sand ship while it's being destroyed by these tentacles, only to get outside and be attacked by this. Violet Sight was annoying at first, but once you get it down, it's Girahim has 3 different fights throughout the game, and I love all of them, especially the last one. I'm a sucker for the one-on-one sword duels, and these fights are climatic and entertaining as hell. The Imprison, though, I mean, the first 2 fights are fine. Those encounters aren't overly annoying until he starts sending out the damn shockwaves. But the third encounter just straight up sucks. And unlike Girahim, who evolves with each encounter and has newer attacks and patterns, all 3 fights with the Imprison play out the same way, in which you slash his toes, jam this stone dildo in his forehead, lather, rinse, repeat, with maybe a bomb toss from Bruce every once in a while. Demise is a great final boss, but I'd also say it's one of the hardest final bosses in the franchise. He swings hard, he barely leaves himself open, and can't be distracted as easily. Despite the dungeons and bosses having great flow, design, and pacing, the world suffers a bit from repetition. You're going to go through these areas quite a bit, whether it's for side quests, plot progression, or through the Silent Realm trials. Before you start looking for the sacred flames in each area, you need to go through these challenges to temper Link's spirit. You go around collecting these tears to keep the timer up, and you only have 1 hit point before you fail and have to try again. It's like the tear collecting in Twilight Princess, but instead of exploring the areas for the first time, you're tested on your knowledge of these areas. I mean, these are fine, I don't lean one way or the other with these. If you want to reduce the time backtracking through these areas, you have 2 options. Either power through it, or fuel capitalism. So, Nintendo has been releasing Amiibo with their major releases for quite some time now, and usually they unlock some sort of bonus feature. Like Breath of the Wild giving you costumes based on the figures, more on that next time. Early unlocks for costumes in Super Mario Odyssey, a reserve missile and energy tank in Samus Returns and Metroid Dread, or even saving preset outfits in Splatoon 3. With Skyward Sword HD, Nintendo released the Zelda and Loftwing Amiibo, and what does it do? It allows you to warp straight back to the sky without going to a bird statue, and scanning it again will take you right back down to the surface where you last were. What the fuck? Now don't get me wrong, this feature is great, but why, out of everything you could have possibly added for the remaster, was this the thing you locked behind the Amiibo? It's not like you couldn't have given Link an item to do the same thing. Was it just so they could sell an Amiibo with the game? Why not have the reward be like a new tunic or a saddle for your Loftwing? Fuck it! Why not another mini dungeon like the Wolf Link Amiibo from Twilight Princess? As well as this Amiibo is constructed, it just felt kinda scummy to put a great quality of life feature behind a $25 figure. Skyward Sword also isn't apologetic with how long its intro is. If you thought Twilight Princess took a bit to get going, well then you, sir, have not played Skyward Sword. Ironically, it didn't feel that long to me since I was invested in the story, but it still takes you a few hours before you even reach the first dungeon. Graphically, this game is gorgeous. It looks like an impressionist art piece come to life, and with the 60 frame per second enhancement of the HD remaster, it looks so good in motion. Character models and environments are constructed well, and texture work is on point. And for the first game in the series to have a fully orchestrated soundtrack, it knocks it out of the park. With how many good pieces there are, it rivals Majora's Mask as my favorite soundtrack. All the boss themes are great, the dungeon themes are great, area themes, minigame themes, harp songs, character themes, the credits, it's all so fucking good. The Ballad of the Goddess is also my second favorite main theme in the franchise, and you'll find out what number 1 is next time. Skyward Sword is a double-edged sword at many parts of the adventure. The story, characters, dungeons, items, bosses, and world design make a great argument for this game being one of the best in the series. But its pacing, repetition, item management, and length make just as good arguments for the game being one of the worst. If you can look past some of the game's less graceful moments, then I can recommend this to you. While these issues stick out like a sore thumb, they don't bother me too much personally, especially when it comes to the other better parts of the game being so damn enjoyable to me. It's a Zelda game I can see myself coming back to again, but one I recommend you approach with caution. I could easily recommend either the Wii or Switch version if you're interested, so if you can't get one, go for the other. My preferred version is the Switch version purely for the enhanced visuals and the controls, but I'd have little issues going back to the Wii version.
Whew, okay. 7 down, 1 more to go, and I cannot believe that we are almost at the last video of my first ever marathon. I'm going to go a little bit more into it in the next video, but just to get some of it out now, I want to thank you guys for watching and supporting over the past couple of months. You guys have been awesome for just taking the time out of your schedule to sit down and watch me talk about one of my favorite series ever. But again, we can get into all of that in the next video because we still got 1 more game to go before Tears of the Kingdom comes out in May. And it's coming up so quick. I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to finish this, but I'm going to be working as hard as I can to get this video out before Tears of the Kingdom comes out. But, you know, bear with me, folks. I'm only one man. This is a one-man band. So the video is going to come out when it comes out. So just please be patient, but it's going to be a good one because next time we're finishing the main part of the Zelda Marathon with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.